in the far reaches of what will one day be called Syria, before alphabets, before iron, before empire, there lies a plain where copper glints beneath the soil and caravans groan under their loads. Wind moves across the flat earth in slow, rasping breaths, brushing the grasses into patterns lost before they form. Here the land holds more than sand. Beneath shallow crusts of limestone and chalk, there are veins of movement, obsidian from Anatolia, cedar from the Levantine coast, tin from the Zagros, and copper from distant mines, all threaded through this place like soft light through woven cloth. And slowly, where these invisible threads cross, something stirs. The people call it Ebla, though they will not spell its name for centuries. A cluster of huts becomes a village becomes walls become order. The first stones are sun-baked. The mortar is mud, and the future is soft as a lamb's breath. There is no king yet, only councils, elders, and priestly functionaries who divide grain, tend fires, and mark the rhythms of the sky. Yet the shape of a city is already forming, not in marble or gold, but in clay and copper, and the quiet will of structure. Traders arrive with pack animals bearing lapis lazuli sealed in pouches of sheep hide. Their hooves beat a slow percussion into the earth. Bronze blades gleam in scabbards not yet drawn. The scent of spiced resins mingles with sweat and with the hot dust of arrival. Transactions take place under awnings, weighed, recorded, forgotten. But the rhythm remains. There are no monuments yet, no statues with arms outstretched to heaven, only clay ovens, roof beams darkened with smoke, and low voices. A potter turns her wheel in the corner of the courtyard. A shepherd counts his flocks and sings softly to the gods of sky and hill. They do not know what they are building. They do not hear the shape of a kingdom forming in the slow arrangements of barley sacks and goat skins. At the city's centre, an early temple rises, not large, but precise. Its walls are thick, and its inner sanctum faces the morning sun. Offerings of honey and oil are laid in carved bowls of soft limestone. The priests do not speak of conquest. They speak of balance, and of grain, and of the wind's moods. There is something timeless here, even as the place is young. Sunlight falls in slats across doorways. Firelight flickers on painted walls. Already the people of Ebla begin to measure things, jars, weights, steps, even hours. They etch tallies into sticks, mould impressions in clay, and learn to keep time by counting. A city is emerging not from conquest, but from counting. This is the first irony. The city will be remembered not for what it takes, but for what it records. On the high Acropolis, where the breeze is strongest and the soil most defensible, the first true structures are raised with an engineer's caution. Basalt foundations support walls of mud brick, shaped by thousands of hands. The smell of wet clay mingles with the faint tang of iron-rich dust. Men pass buckets up ladders. Women sing to the rhythm of grain being pounded. Children trace spirals into the dust. Unaware, they echo patterns on future seals. The artisans of this early Ebla do not build with extravagance. Instead, they build with care. Doorways are aligned with prevailing winds. Streets are angled to drain the rare but sudden rains. Drainage channels and storage pits are carved by hand. They do not leave their names. Their plans are oral, their blueprints buried with them. The second irony: the builders of permanence remain anonymous. At night the stars shine cleanly, unpolluted by fire or forge. The people know them by names lost to us. They do not write these names, only remember them. The priests note when one vanishes, when another rises, and plant accordingly. Calendars are not written yet, but lived. This too will change. Somewhere in this city, perhaps in a shaded room cooled by stone and water, a priestess chants over a vessel of barley beer. Her voice is low even, without haste. She wears a pendant of electrum, a blend of sun-coloured metal unknown to those beyond these roots. Her words praise the spirits of place, not of conquest. Her presence, like so many others here, will be erased. Ebla grows not in bursts, but in rhythms. It thickens, it organises. Trade routes that once brushed its edges begin to pass through its heart. With each passing caravan, more is left behind. A shard, a dialect, a deity, a measure of cloth, a measure of silence. Yet even in this calm, one can sense the forming of something grander. Caches of copper ingots are stored behind wooden doors wrapped in leather. Tall granaries hum with the breath of fermenting wheat. Tablets begin to appear, not yet the massive archive of a later years, but testaments in miniature, short lists, names of herds, prayers pressed by thumb and stylus. Some of these early signs endure, others dissolve into soil. One such tablet, broken and worn, lists a gift of 20 jars of honey sent to an unnamed priest by an unnamed woman. It is a fragment, half effaced, but it endures. This is the third irony. The small things survive, while the grand remain lost, and still the city expands, steady as the rising moon. From the high walls one can see beyond the valley, across flatlands toward Mari, toward the unknown. The roads are quiet tonight, but they will not always be. Kings will come, wars will rise, temples will swell, but for now Ebla is young, Ebla is calm. The copper glints beneath the hills, and the wind whispers through stone. The archivists are not yet born, but their clay is already drying in the sun, and the silence of beginning still hums through every courtyard. The city swells, not with noise, but with order. The mud brick houses now stretch in firm concentric rings down from the Acropolis, and narrow lanes wind between them like irrigation channels for thought. This is no longer a village. Ebla has awakened into a city, not through bloodshed or divine command, but through the still mathematics of grain, tax, and clay. Each morning, the scribes enter rooms cooled by thick walls and shadowed from the sun. There are no windows, only the soft flicker of oil lamps and the rustle of linen robes. They sit cross-legged before wooden shelves stacked with clay, not yet fired, still pliable. On low tables, styluses of reed rest like instruments of music, ready to impress signs upon the day. Here, a new kind of authority emerges. The power of Ebla does not march or shout. It records what is planted, what is harvested, what is traded, what is promised. The city's lifeblood now runs through these rooms, through tablets arranged like silent sentences of stone. Over time, the scribes organize them by room, by reign, by category. Kingship, economics, rituals. One room contains only treaties. Another holds only lists of textiles. Fine linen from Egypt, wool from the hills, fringed with names like ashes caught in wind. Bureaucracy becomes priesthood. Nothing is too small to record. A jar of fig paste, a broken wagon wheel, the name of a donkey. And so Ebla becomes the city of archives, its rulers not only crowned but counted. This is the first of many transformations. Where once decisions were whispered among elders, now they are catalogued and signed in clay. Governance takes form as tablets, royal edicts, grain allotments, marriage arrangements. Each one is marked with a seal, a cylinder rolled across the surface, leaving behind images of gods, beasts and crossed branches. These seals become signatures of power, pressed into the clay with a reverence usually reserved for prayer. There are many of these, thousands, and yet the names of their owners often fade. This is the first gentle irony. The instruments of remembrance forget their makers. The climate within the archives is dry, and time moves differently here. A single day's work may contain 20 documents, each a fragment of an empire forming one breath at a time. A merchant signs away his shipment of copper, trusting the seal more than his own brother. A priest catalogues the offerings left for Kura, noting each incense cone, each sliver of gold foil. The gods, it seems, require precise accounting. Outside, Ebla grows louder. Courtyards fill with sheep, children, and the low thrum of commerce. Pottery kilns fire through the night, casting an orange glow across the hills. But in the archive rooms, the silence remains. Some of these scribes are barely older than boys. Their hands move with practice, guided by memory and repetition. Their training is strict. They learn not just writing, but arrangement, how to structure a tablet so that its meaning endures. One makes a mistake, crosses a line too heavily, and the tablet is crushed before it dries. Perfection is quiet. Precision is ritual. No one records the names of these boys. That is the second irony. Those who preserve the city's voice will never speak for themselves. The language they write is Eblate, now extinct, then alive, a branch of Semitic speech shaped by contact with Akkadian, with Sumerian, with tongues no longer traceable. Some signs are borrowed, some invented. It is a puzzle even in its own time. But the scribes do not question its form. They replicate it, refine it, pass it on. Every word pressed into the clay is both ephemeral and eternal. The wet clay is soft, vulnerable, like the city itself. But once fired, the marks remain, fixed beyond intention, and so a city once built of mud and barter becomes one ruled by documents. Even kings must submit to the archives. Royal proclamations are etched and filed. Negotiations with foreign powers, Mari, Naga, Kish, are recorded in elaborate diplomatic form. Gifts are exchanged and each one catalogued. Lapis lazuli pendants, fine horses, carved ivory combs. Alliances bloom like gardens and die like frost, but the tablets endure. One fragment reads only, 5 garments of blue dye, sent for peace. It does not say whether peace followed. This is the third irony. The words remain, but not their consequences. Within these archives, the city becomes self-aware. The scribes are not merely recorders, but curators of memory. They begin to catalogue names of kings, ancestors, temple foundations, land boundaries. The past becomes something that can be summoned with a tablet, revised with a stylus. It is no longer only what the elders remember, it is what the clay remembers. This innovation spreads. Other cities take notice. Ebla's system is admired, studied, copied. Its scribes are invited to teach. Clay becomes the medium of diplomacy. A letter from a king arrives sealed and fired, addressed to the Lord of Ebla, guardian of tablets. There is no army in this phrase, only reverence. Somewhere in the city, in a room no longer standing, a woman signs a treaty with a foreign power. Her seal is delicate, a bird with outstretched wings resting atop a mountain. She presses it into a folded tablet. The clay accepts her authority without question. We do not know her name. Her treaty survives in fragments. That is the fourth irony. She shapes peace, but disappears before the line is read. The rooms fill, tablet upon tablet. Some are stacked, others shelved in baskets. Eventually the volume exceeds the scribe's reach. They begin to bury outdated records in jars or under the floors, sealing the old years away like offerings to time. The weight of the past presses down softly upon the present, and still they write. At night, when the lamps are snuffed and the courtyards emptied of sound, the air within the archives is heavy with the breath of inkless thought. Outside, the sky turns. Inside, the words sleep. Clay, once shaped by water and hand, now holds kingdoms. The city lies quiet, but the tablets are never silent. Before crowns are hammered from bronze or banners unfurled in courtly procession, there are simply those who preside, not as kings, but as stewards, guides, ritual keepers. These are the proto-Eblaites, early figures of leadership whose power does not yet take the form of inheritance or divine right, but of calculation, coordination, and sacred repetition. They do not sit on thrones. They stand beside granaries, temples, and market gates, counting and observing, murmuring prayers to unseen forces as the city takes its first breath of purpose. In this early era, rule is a rhythm, not a mandate. The priests serve as organizers of life's cycles, sowing and reaping, baking and sacrificing, sealing and unsealing. In low halls cooled by plastered walls, they keep time not with bells, but with barley, smoke, and sunrise. These are the men and women who shape Ebla without ever claiming it. A sacred calendar governs the flow of the year. It is marked not by paper or stone, but by action. The feast of first barley, the day of the river's return, the silent nights of Cura. These names are passed in whispers, scratched into bones and eventually pressed into wet clay. Each season carries with it obligations to plant, to purify, to mourn, to wait. The temple officials oversee these rites with gentle precision. They are not worshipped, but neither are they ignored. They hold sway in the invisible realm where routine becomes memory. The people obey them not because of fear, but because their world continues to turn in time with their commands. The temples, early and unadorned, are the hearts of this proto-kingship. Built of thick mud brick and buttressed by care, they are both storehouses and sanctuaries. Their floors are swept daily with reeds. Their altars bear traces of wine, oil, and finely ground flour. Offerings are not grand, but consistent. Daily, seasonal, cyclical. Nothing is wasted. Even the incense ashes collected and stored. This is the first irony. The gods demand offerings, and yet nothing leaves the temple. It is all accounted for, redistributed, noted. Divinity here is not thunderous but ledgered. These leaders, not yet called kings, operate through ritual and logistics. One man oversees the collection of taxes in the form of goats and wool. Another ensures the roads to the outer farms remain clear of debris and banditry. A woman supervises the storage of dried fish along the riverbank. These roles are sacred, though never grandiose. There are no crowns, only seals, no thrones, only seats of woven rushes. Power flows through function, and still the city grows. In the hills beyond Ebla, stones are carved with early symbols, not yet writing but markers, boundaries, prayers to the horizon. A stone slab is found centuries later bearing faint spiral grooves in a single shallow bowl. Perhaps an altar, perhaps a grave, perhaps both. This is the gentle mystery. Without names, these signs remain suspended between memory and myth. No one speaks from the stone, and yet the silence speaks volumes. Meanwhile, life in the city thickens. Children run along packed earth alleys, carrying baskets of bread still warm from ovens fired with brushwood. Craftsmen sit beneath reed awnings, hammering copper pins and polishing shells into beads. In the cool cellars of the temple, administrators count jars of lentils, whispering the quantities like charms. 12 for the east granary, 7 for the priestesses of Ishara, 3 to be buried with the harvest goddess. Numbers are sacred. Even mistakes are ritualized. One entry reads, 2 goats vanished, not counted. Blessed be the unaccounted. A note of gentle humour, or perhaps apology. This is the second irony. Perfection is pursued, but the system allows space for absence. The people of early Ebla understand that not all things can be measured, and so they measure them anyway. The air within the city is rich with the smells of life. Charred grain, damp clay, sweat, resin, dung. It is not unpleasant, merely layered. Ebla is not yet a city of beauty, but of texture. The streets are uneven, and the buildings lean inward with age. But the people walk them with purpose. A mother carries her child beneath a linen veil, pausing to speak with a market official about the price of pomegranate skins. A fisherman from the lake brings a gift of salt-dried carp to the temple gate, unsure if it is sufficient. A low chant rises from the southern quarter. Not a festival, only a tallying song sung during the pouring of oil. This too is ritual. In the midst of this growing order, someone, perhaps a council of elders, perhaps a priest-chief whose name is already lost, decides that a record must be kept not just of goods, but of decisions. A new type of tablet appears, longer, more formal. It includes names, titles, durations, and oaths. The first echoes of authority as continuity, not just what was given, but who gave it, and for how long. Thus begins the slow transition from stewardship to kingship, not through coronation or conquest, but through inscription. A man signs his name not once, but many times. His seal appears on both religious and economic tablets. His name is associated with the calendar, with temple maintenance, with water rights. It spreads. And then it is repeated by others. The role outlasts the person. Kingship begins not with war, but with repetition. Some tablets from this early phase are discovered thousands of years later, pressed into layers of fallen brick and ash. They carry names that appear nowhere else, titles that resist translation. One reads, Guardian of the South Wall, year of the heavy flood. Another simply says, he weighed the silver. We do not know who he is, but he is still here, quietly recorded in the bones of the city. This is the third irony. The city forgets nothing, and yet remembers no one. Outside the archives, life continues. The hills shift in the wind. Traders come and go. Storms carve new shapes into the river's banks. But inside the city, something new has taken root. The proto-kings, those silent organizers, those priestly architects of custom, have built the framework. The city is ready for names that will endure. Thrones will be carved. Crowns will be forged. Clay will carry not just lists, but legacies. The scribes prepare. Their hands, already skilled, begin to record new forms, invocations to gods of war, tallies of weapons, formulas of rule. The city's memory grows stronger, denser, more deliberate. Ebla is no longer merely a place. It is becoming a system, a mind. And beneath that mind, the silence deepens, as if waiting for someone to speak with true authority. The silence of proto-kingship gives way to the echo of names carved more deeply. Among the first rulers to step forward from the mist of record is Igrish Halam, a figure both distant and discernible, emerging from the tablets not as myth or shadow, but as the first whose title is not merely function, but dominion. He reigns during a time when Ebla begins to lift its gaze beyond its hills and valleys, when the ledgers of tribute lengthen and the seals of foreign cities arrive by caravan. Igrish-Hallam is not a conqueror in the sense of battlefields or bronze-plated pomp. His expansion is slow, methodical, and rooted in treaty, trade, and tribute. Under his watch, Ebla ceases to be simply a city of counting. It becomes a node in a growing web of power, subtle and measured, where the weights of jars and the worth of oaths carry more sway than any drawn blade. The archives thicken with names not of Ebla alone, but of places far and strange. Kish, Nagar, Bari. Their emissaries come with mules and fabrics, scented oils and polished bowls, each accompanied by letters impressed in foreign hands. The scribes study these messages with reverence. Some are copied, some are answered, some are preserved unopened, sealed and unread, perhaps as insurance, perhaps as ritual. Igrish-Hallam's court does not seek conquest through soldiers, but through presence. Ebla's goods, woolen garments dyed in indigo, carved ivory inlays, perfumes distilled from mountain myrtle, travel outward. In return, silver arrives in lumps, tin in misshapen bars, lapis lazuli in soft leather wrappings. The king does not ride out to see these cities. He receives them steadily, beneath columns painted with ochre and blue. This is the first irony of expansion. Power grows outward, but the king remains still. The palace begins to take shape as something more than a residence. It becomes an institution, a place where decisions are not shouted but pressed into clay. Ministers gather in its shaded halls, and their voices are low, deliberate, measured. The council meets daily, or so the tablets suggest, to discuss the flow of tribute, the health of granaries, the rotation of temple personnel. There are no laws yet in the formal sense, but precedent governs like gravity. A decision made once is cited again, refined, copied. One decree from Igrish-Hallam reads, "Let the barley of the north fields be stored in the third chamber until the month of bitter wind." This is not poetry, but power. Foreign kings acknowledge Ebla's reach. They send gifts and greetings. One letter arrives from Nagar sealed in red clay, addressed to the Lord of Ebla, chosen by the gods of fair measure. Another from Kish bears a stylized lion and no words, only the seal and a weight of silver enclosed. This symbolism is clear. To Ebla, tribute is owed. But how much of this stems from fear and how much from policy remains uncertain. Scholars debate Igrish-Hallam's true stature. Some argue he ruled over 40 vassal cities. Others suggest only a dozen. The ambiguity lingers, like smoke curling from a censer. This is the second irony. The more Ebla is remembered, the less it is known for sure. Yet the impact is visible. Roads are reinforced. Rest stops and way stations are noted in scribal shorthand. Ebla's merchants move freely through corridors of diplomacy, carved not with swords but with styluses. A merchant's tablet notes a journey from Ebla to Kish, naming every city passed through. 32 in total, each one a dot on the edge of order. Trade becomes geography. Geography becomes administration. Within the city the rhythm changes. The people sense a new complexity. Foreigners are more frequent in the markets, their speech unfamiliar, their manners stilted, their coins different in weight and colour. The scribes adapt. New words enter the Eblate lexicon. Words for rare stones, for mountain herbs, for unfamiliar rituals. A list in one archive details the ingredients for a purification bath offered to a goddess from Mari. No one knows if the recipe was used, but it is preserved. This is the third irony. What is written may never be practiced, and what is practiced may never be written. Igrish Hallam's seal survives in multiple forms: a tree flanked by two bulls, a mountain surmounted by a crescent moon, a lion devouring a serpent. Each symbol is deliberate, its meaning both immediate and layered. To his own people, the seal proclaims legitimacy. To others, it warns of unseen reach. He does not write his deeds in verse, only in weight and tribute. Yet his influence crosses lands without horses, without chariots. His name, when it appears, does so in context, never alone, always alongside an act of allocation, of distribution, of calculated balance. He's not remembered for speeches, but for equilibrium. In the temple of Cura, offerings increase. The priests burn cedar shavings and lay copper figurines before the altar. They say prayers not for conquest, but for continuance. The god is thanked for smooth transactions and favourable assessments. A hymn is found centuries later, etched into clay, that reads, "May the measure never spoil, may the weight never shift. Even the divine is bound to the logic of trade." And still the expansion continues, quietly, without fanfare. One day a new courtyard is added to the palace. Its floor is paved with flattened stone. In one corner a storage jar taller than a man is filled with records. Not food, not gold, but tablets, each stamped and dated. The clerks joke that it holds the weight of all decisions. Their names are not kept, but the jar survives. The age of Igrish Hallam passes as gently as it began. No battles are recorded, no conquests sung. Yet when his seal fades, a structure remains, a network of tribute, a protocol of letters, a presumption of Ebla's centrality. His son will inherit not merely a throne, but a system of influence made from clay and copper. The city does not cheer at his passing. It continues. The scribes note the change in hands. The council continues to meet. The roads remain open. And in the quiet, the expansion endures, outward, silent and firm, like ink seeping through parchment. In the quiet hours before dawn, the temples breathe before the city does. They are not large in scale, not yet crowned with ziggurats or layered with precious metals, but they are deliberate, placed with celestial alignment, built upon earth packed by generations of hands. To walk through them is to enter an atmosphere not of fear, but of calibration, a balance between offering and expectation, between ash and absence. Ebla's gods are not wrathful or transcendent. They are woven into the fabric of the state, guardians of silence, rhythm and reciprocity. The most sacred among them is Cura, Ebla's patron deity, whose name is inscribed more often than any king's. His presence does not descend with fire or thunder, but lingers in the margins of tablets, at the base of seals, beside the ledgers of tribute. Cura is not just worshipped, he is budgeted. At the temple of Cura, the scent of cedar smoke coils upward through narrow slats in the roof. Priests dressed in finely spun wool, dyed with local ochre and set with copper thread, move through the inner sanctum with purposeful slowness. They do not speak unless required. Their hands are occupied with the tasks of measurement. A shekel of barley for each shrine, a measured drop of oil into a shallow dish, 3 reeds burned for the cities under Ebla's sway. Everything is tallied. Even prayer becomes a form of record-keeping. A priestess marks the passing of the season with a knotted cord, hanging beside a board of polished wood upon which each holy day is inscribed in faint, wet clay. Other deities populate the sacred landscape of the north: Nidakul, Ishara, Dagon, Reshef. Each has a place, a rite, a day. Ishara presides over oaths and births. Her name is invoked before treaties are sealed, her symbol a lotus cut into the wax. Dagon watches the grain, honoured in fields with whispered incantations and small shrines near irrigation channels. These gods are not abstract ideals, they are administrators in the divine bureaucracy, each bound to cycles, regions and registers. Their presence sanctifies the mechanisms of the state. When Ebla sends diplomats to Mari or Kish, they carry not only letters but small clay figures of Kura or Ishara, tucked in linen, pressed with a royal seal, not just tokens of faith, but of legitimacy. This is the first irony of worship in Ebla. The gods are omnipresent, but also carefully itemized. The temples do not only function as places of prayer, they are storage centers, tax offices, and redistribution hubs. Offerings are accepted, recorded, and reissued. A man may leave 3 jugs of honey and receive 2 of beer and a measure of dried fruit in return. The priests maintain ledgers longer than any royal decree. The divine and the economic are indistinguishable. A single tablet lists: to Kura, 6 sheep, 2 bolts of linen, 4 copper rings, from the North Gate quarter, offered for the 5th day of the dark moon. There is no plea, no prophecy, only allocation, and yet the faith is sincere. Outside the temple walls, the people of Ebla participate in rituals not of spectacle, but of rhythm. In spring, garlands of river grass are braided and placed at doorposts. In winter, the first pomegranate is broken open in silence, its seeds counted, then buried. Children learn the names of the gods before they learn numbers, and when they do learn numbers, they count on fingers named for stars. It is a system older than record-keeping, yet preserved within it. The rites of the city do not seek to control the gods, only to remain in agreement with them. Harmony is everything. And so it is with the calendar, carved not in stone but maintained in custom. Each day has its weight. The 5th day of the 8th month is sacred to Nidakul. On that day, no fire is lit before sunrise. The temple gates remain open but unspoken. Even the scribes reduce their duties, allowing silence to accumulate like ash on the floor. There are no festivals with drums or horns, no parades, only observance. The city bends toward its gods not through spectacle, but through precision. Archaeologists centuries later uncover small altars in private homes, miniature versions of the great sanctuaries with traces of burned myrrh, a chipped figurine, and a single line of cuneiform, to the one who listens. Who listens remains unclear. The house is long gone, the roof collapsed, the owner's name absent, yet the inscription endures. This is the second irony. What is addressed to the divine lasts longer than what is spoken to the living. The royal family is deeply entwined in this religious structure. Kings offer public sacrifices and fund temple renovations. Queens oversee seasonal rites, selecting which garments are worn and what inscriptions are sung. Their seals appear on tablets of temple distribution, verifying that the correct incense has been delivered, that the priests are fed, that the calendars align. Governance is an extension of ritual. A fragmentary text records a ceremony led by Igrish Hallam's consort, who pours milk over a carved stone during the solstice. Her name is missing. The act is not. This is the third irony. The hand is gone, but the gesture survives. At dusk, the temple courtyards glow with low firelight. Priests chant softly, not to be heard, but to mark the changing of the air. The city does not fall asleep abruptly, it exhales. Birds settle on rooftops. The scent of old ash and warm bread lingers. Children, already asleep, dream of bulls and stars. And still the gods are present, not above, but around, layered into the very architecture of the night. Ebla's faith is not loud. It does not aim to conquer the heavens, it binds them, and in so doing it binds the city to itself, to its rituals, to its memory, to its delicate, unspoken contract with time. They arrive early, before the city stirs, before the smoke from hearths begins to rise, before the courtyards echo with the tap of sandals and the hum of bartering. The archivists slip into narrow rooms where the dust is thick and the light is thin, where the walls are lined with clay shelves and the floor bears the prints of decades of soft-shoed passage. Their robes are plain, their names often forgotten, yet they are the breath and bone of Ebla's mind. The scribes, the stewards of permanence, preserve not only what happens, but how it is remembered. Within these rooms, paper does not exist, and ink is yet unknown. Clay is the only memory. Fresh, pliant, receptive to pressure, it is both fragile and eternal. A scribe kneels beside a tablet, reed stylus poised between thumb and forefinger, and begins to carve the morning's first entry. He does not rush. His letters must last centuries. The archives grow like coral, layer by layer, year by year. What begins as a few simple storage rooms beneath the palace swells into a vast and living organism. There are chambers for law, for religion, for trade. There are inventories of livestock, rolls of servants, tallies of copper, accounts of imported cedar wood, and between the factual, the subtle traces of the human, a scribal error scratched out and corrected with a muttered curse, a prayer written at the edge of an inventory, a personal name preserved only once, never repeated. The air in the archives is cool, dry, heavy with the scent of earth and oil. No birds sing here, only the soft rustle of linen robes and the tap of styluses on wet clay. Among the most prized chambers is the royal archive, where the correspondence of Ebla's kings is stored in sealed baskets, labelled with small clay tags. Some baskets contain letters to foreign rulers, greetings, demands, promises. Others hold duplicates of treaties, formal and weighty, signed with the seals of multiple parties. These tablets do not shout, they do not dramatize, they whisper. A letter from Mari. We send the wool as agreed. Let the peace remain in its place. A fragment from Nagar. If the month is right, we come. If not, we delay. Each word is deliberate. Each carries the weight of months of preparation, of risk across trade routes, of the gods' unpredictable favour. This is the first irony. Diplomacy is fragile, but the tablets endure. The scribes who manage these archives are trained from childhood. They are not nobles, not warriors, not priests. They are functionaries selected for precision, patience, and memory. Their lives are spent among symbols, some borrowed from Sumer, some adapted from speech, some invented entirely. They learn to read in silence, to calculate without aid, to copy without deviation. Their mistakes are fired into permanence. Their achievements are rarely credited. One records the tribute from 30 towns and marks each entry with his seal, a stylized tree beneath a crescent moon. The seal is known, his name is not. This is the second irony. The hands that shape history are themselves erased by time. As the archives expand, so too does the complexity of their contents. The scribes begin to develop categories, organizing tablets by date, by subject, by relevance to temple or palace. A system emerges, not entirely systematic but functional. One room contains records of land tenure, who farms which fields, who owes which portion to which deity. Another lists the dowries of noblewomen, some reaching into lavish sums of cloth, livestock and precious metal. Still another preserves the names of messengers. One tablet notes, sent from Ebla to Kish, bearing tribute and greetings, returned with silver. The name of the messenger is included once, never again. Occasionally among the dry entries there are moments of poetry. A line scratched into the margin of a legal agreement reads, "As the moon remembers the night, so we remember this pact." A note beside a shipment of barley, taken under a sky without stars. Whether these were habits of a single scribe or common practice is unknown. The fragments remain, unlinked to biography. They float, tethered only to the clay. In time, the archivists develop their own rituals. Before beginning the day's work, they pour a few drops of oil into a small basin set into the floor, a gesture of offering to the god of memory, unnamed but always present. They do not speak of this act. It is not recorded. But the basin is discovered centuries later, stained with oil, placed beside a tablet inscribed with the names of 20 tributary cities. The proximity is not coincidence. It is habit made sacred. This is the third irony. What was never written down is what endures in practice. To outsiders, the archive appears as storage, as bureaucracy, as stone-pressed minutiae. But to Ebla, it is breath. Without it, the city cannot govern, cannot trade, cannot remember its own legitimacy. The tablets are not passive records. They are tools, they are guardians, they are oracles. A decision is questioned, a scribe is summoned, a treaty disputed, a tablet retrieved. The past is not a story. It is a filing system. Over time, certain documents grow heavier than others. The tablets of Irkab-Damu's treaties, when stacked, form a block the size of a young child. They are moved only with care, wrapped in linen, lifted by two men. One scribe jokes, his remark is etched in a margin, that the weight of peace is measured in cracked fingernails. His humour is dry, brittle, enduring. Elsewhere in the archive, older tablets are retired, placed in sealed jars and buried beneath the floors. The practice is not ceremonial, only practical. Space is limited. Time must be managed. Yet in burying the past, the scribes give it a second life. Many of these jars survive the fire to come. Their contents, unburned, slumber for 4,000 years beneath the soil. They are uncovered in silence centuries later by hands that do not speak Eblaites, who must decipher without guidance. But the clay still holds. The tablets speak quietly, as they always have. This is the final irony of the archive. The living forget, but the dead remember. And still, in the heart of the city, the archivists write, unseen, unnamed, essential. Each day they press the present into permanence, knowing that they themselves will vanish. But the tablets will remain, silent and patient, waiting beneath centuries of ash and earth for a light to return. He is not born into a blank slate. Irkab-Damu rises within a city already layered with memory, surrounded by stone courtyards worn smooth by ritual and by corridors filled with tablets recording the acts of men he never knew. But his reign marks something different. With him, kingship becomes sharper, more declarative, more deliberate. No longer merely a figure among priests or a name on seals, the king begins to move like a fulcrum, pressing his presence into every corner of the state's body. Irkab-Damu rules not only through command, but through consolidation. He does not dismantle the systems his predecessors nurtured. He gathers them, aligns them, expands them. The scribes continue to write, but now the tone shifts. The archives swell with royal correspondence, tribute lists, war preparations, and diplomatic decrees. His name appears everywhere, signed, sealed, confirmed. In some rooms 100 tablets bear his mark. One reads, Irkab-Damu, chosen of Kura, ruler of Ebla and all cities joined by peace. It is not a boast, it is a structure. His power does not come from spectacle. He does not ride in triumph through gates draped in gold, nor does he order monuments to rise in impossible haste. His reign is incremental, logistical, calculated. His weapon is not the sword, but the tablet. Still, he builds. The palace expands, its walls reinforced and corridors widened. New courtyards are added, one reserved for foreign dignitaries, another for the storage of tribute. The number of scribes increases. A registry is created to track messengers and their destinations. No word is allowed to wander without being accounted for. This is the first irony of Irkab-Damu's power. He rules through silence made visible. The reach of Ebla under his rule stretches outward like the slow rise of floodwaters. Not sudden, not violent, but unstoppable. Cities once only loosely bound by trade now become formal allies or subjects. Their tribute is scheduled, their gifts predictable. Their leaders refer to Ebla's court in their own letters, acknowledging authority not out of fear, but out of necessity. One missive from the city of Abarsal opens with the phrase, "We write in the manner of Ebla so that our words may be believed." The phrase echoes in multiple documents, formulaic and sincere. It is not just a diplomatic gesture. It is an alignment of trust. Treaties proliferate. Some are long, carved across several tablets. Others are brief, sharp, unmistakable. One recovered fragment reads, "Peace shall hold through the fourth harvest. If not, the gods shall witness the breaking." Irkab-Damu's scribes oversee these agreements, crafting them with care, storing duplicates in sealed rooms, and sending fired versions to foreign kings. A few are returned unopened, the seals unbroken. Those too are kept. He is also remembered for his reforms. Under Irkab-Damu, the palace court is reorganized. Ministers are appointed to oversee land, livestock, labour and temple coordination. Grain reserves are standardized, their measurements codified into ratios that remain legible even centuries later. Taxes are recalibrated, not raised but clarified. The scribes document each adjustment, and their language becomes more formal, more legalistic. A list from the Central Archive states, "The northern farmers shall bring 1 measure for each 10 harvested. The southern farmers, 2 for each 20. If spoiled, report within 3 days. If not reported, forfeit." Nothing is left to chance. This is the second irony. Precision is celebrated, but life remains imprecise. Military matters, too, find their place within the archive. Irkab-Damu is not known for warfare, yet he prepares for it carefully. Chariot parts are catalogued, horse feed distributed, training regimens assigned to certain months of the year. A room within the palace is dedicated to martial inventory, not of battles, but of readiness. One tablet lists 12 bows, 30 arrows, 6 shields, 2 spears splintered. Another, more curious, includes 1 soldier, lame, assigned to gate duty, still faithful. The detail is mundane, and yet it endures. Ebla's religious life continues under his supervision, but with closer integration to the state. Irkab-Damu funds temple renovations, particularly for Kura and Nishara. New altars are built, their dimensions specified in tablets sent to the artisans. 4 cubits long, 2 cubits wide, 1 cubit high, face east, carve stars along the edge. He attends seasonal ceremonies, though always seated apart from the priests, his presence both sacred and administrative. The divine remains woven into governance, but now in patterns more sharply defined. His seal changes over time. Earlier examples show a single figure standing beneath a tree. Later, The seal displays a lion beside a city wall. Strength, perhaps, or watchfulness. This stylization is clear. He wishes to be seen, but not flamboyantly. He wishes to be remembered, but only as proof of order. There is no mythic aura surrounding his rule, no grand saga of conquest or rebellion. His legacy is the survival of complexity. And yet, even with such care, the record contains gaps. Some years go unaccounted for. Some letters reference conflicts that no tablet explains. One foreign king accuses Urukabdamu of breaking a pact. The response is missing. Another treaty lists reparations that imply a loss, but there is no mention of defeat. Scholars debate the cause. Were records destroyed, or simply never made? This is the third irony. The king who preserved everything is not fully preserved. When Urukabdamu dies, there is no record of mourning, no funeral described, no monument named. His seal vanishes. His successor, Ishadamu, assumes the throne without ceremonial flourish. The scribes record the transition plainly. In the year of the long reign, Ishadamu took the seat. That is all, and yet the structure remains, the archive endures. The tributary cities continue to send their goods. The treaties remain unbroken. Urukabdamu's true monument is the city's coherence. In the still air of the palace archive, the shelves groan with the weight of his reign. There is no statue to him, no painting. But the clay carries his breath. Each tablet a heartbeat, steady and deliberate. Each seal an echo. And in the quiet hours, long after the lamps have been extinguished, the archivists still handle his words with care. They dust the tablets. They adjust the stacks. They leave a small bowl of oil before the shelf that bears his seal, not as worship, not as duty, but as memory. The Euphrates glistens far to the east, winding like a silver blade through a land of high stone and salt-laced winds. Along its banks, another city breathes with purpose. Mari, powerful, proud, and restless. While Ebla builds its strength in quiet clay and accumulated treaties, Mari sharpens its voice through gestures of command, its kings favouring bold assertion over balance. Yet between them, something ancient persists. Correspondence. The tablets move like cautious birds between the courts, each one sealed, each one handled as delicately as eggshell. For a time, the diplomacy holds. Urukabdamu's letters to Mari are neither pleading nor defiant. They are precise, patterned, rooted in the shared language of Near Eastern kingship. Gifts, acknowledgements, courtesies. But beneath these niceties, the ground shifts. Mari's ambitions do not sleep. It eyes the same tributary cities that send grain and cloth to Ebla, the same copper roots that pulse like arteries from the hills. Their kings, first unknown, then more boldly named, begin to question boundaries, challenge precedent, alter the rhythm. A letter arrives in Ebla. The caravan sent through Turka was detained. Tribute should be clarified. Its words are civil, but the implication sharp. The clay holds no tone, but the tension is clear. This is the first irony. The letters are soft, but the struggle beneath them is hard. The scribes in Ebla adjust. Their correspondence becomes more layered, more ceremonial. Titles lengthen. Declarations are repeated. One tablet reads, "To the strong king of Mari, chosen of Ishtar, beloved of Enlil, from the great king of Ebla, servant of Kura, guardian of balance." The words are wrapped in reverence, yet they weigh heavily. Tribute is restated. Alliances are reaffirmed. But the letters now travel in pairs. The first sent, the second dispatched days later, repeating the same message in altered form. It is not redundancy, it is strategy. Mary does the same. The messages increase in number, not always in substance. Some are purely ceremonial. We acknowledge your rain festival. May Kura bless the barley. Others are veiled assertions. Our northern gates remain open. Should your merchants pass in peace? There is no declaration of war, only a thickening of words. Clay replaces steel. The cities do not fight, not yet, but they surround each other with presents. Ebla sends emissaries bearing bolts of linen. Mary responds with perfumed oil. Both carry letters. One such emissary returns with a broken leg and a cracked tablet wrapped tightly in cloth. What happened is not recorded. The letter is unreadable. It is still stored in the archive. This is the second irony. The unread tablet remains more significant than the ones we understand. The tributary cities feel the pressure first. Towns that once pledged loyalty to Ebla begin to hesitate. They send their taxes late. They write to both capitals seeking reassurance. One city, Yamhad, sends the same letter to both courts. We offer copper, as before, let it not offend. The ambiguity is deliberate. The scribes in Ebla record the act without comment. The reply is measured, cool. Let all who are joined to Ebla remember their oath. Let Kura bear witness. The clay remains smooth, but the currents beneath begin to swirl. Within the palace, Irkab-Damu consults his council. The meetings are not described. The decisions are not spoken aloud, but the archives reflect their result. A new protocol is issued. Foreign letters must be reviewed by 3 scribes, sealed by a designated steward, and entered into a specific registry. Their language is examined not just for meaning, but for change. A small note appears on a tablet from this period. Mari now omits the second invocation of peace. Observe. The war never comes, but the preparation for its possibility transforms Ebla's posture. A registry of arms is updated. New tablets catalogue spearheads, chariot parts, slings. One scribe adds, fit for 500 men if called. The number is uncertain. The readiness is not. The council requests more regular reports from outer cities. Tribute tallies are monitored with new urgency. The letters continue, each one an artifact of caution. A rare fragment survives from Mari's archives, discovered centuries later. It lists Ebla among other cities, marked not with hostility but with a curious phrase, equal in peace, rival in provision. It is unclear if this reflects respect or anxiety, but the perception is mutual. This is the third irony. Mutual recognition exists only within rivalry. In time, the tension recedes. A new ruler in Mari sends a lavish offering, 20 baskets of dyed wool, 10 silver bracelets, and a lion-shaped incense burner, accompanied by a letter of formal friendship. The letter reads, "Let the rivers between us carry goods, not rumours. Let our seals rest on the same clay." The phrase is poetic, possibly scripted by a clever scribe seeking posterity. It is kept in Ebla's archive, stored in a jar labelled with both kings' names. The moment passes into record and from record into time. Yet even in this fragile detente, the watchers remain alert. One room in the archive is now devoted solely to Mari. Correspondence, inventories, name lists, known holidays, the titles of officials. Knowledge, not weapons, is Ebla's shield. The scribes know the names of Mari's council before they know the faces of their own city's potters. Clay allows for such precision. And still, the letters are sent. Caravans leave with carefully wrapped bundles, each tablet secured in straw, each seal checked thrice. The emissaries are briefed, dressed in simple robes, armed not with blades but with the silence of memorized instructions. They travel the long road east, passing watchposts, river crossings and dust-choked valleys, each step a continuation of balance. In the end, the rivalry does not destroy either city. It defines them. The tension etches deeper lines into their governance, their diplomacy, their archives. They become reflections of each other, not mirrors, but correspondence. What one omits, the other amplifies. What one asserts, the other answers. And as the sun sets over Ebla's palace, casting long shadows through the open halls, a scribe bends once again over a tablet. He carves a single sentence into wet clay. The word travels farther than the man. He does not smile. He does not sign it. He sets it aside to dry, unaware that it will be found millennia later still intact. In the long shadow of the palace, behind doors carved with geometric suns and guarded more by silence than soldiers, the council gathers. It is not a chamber of spectacle. The walls are bare but clean, the floor swept smooth by decades of footsteps, and the air thick with breath held between sentences. Around the central platform sit the officials of Ebla, ministers of trade, overseers of temple stores, scribes of the outer districts, each draped in wool dyed with muted pigments, each holding no weapon but a stylus. At the head of the circle sits a chair unoccupied, carved from a single piece of cedar and adorned only with a seal press of bronze. This is the throne, though its occupant changes, and for many seasons it is not a king who fills it, but a queen. Her name does not echo through conquest or decree. It appears instead in margins on seals at the bottom of treaties. She signs not with flourish, but with firmness. Her presence is recorded in the curl of the seal that marks an agreement with army, in the tally of garments issued to priestesses, in the confirmation of land assigned to temple gardeners. The scribes write her name with care, noting her authority as regent or consort or lady of the court, depending on the tablet and the season. Sometimes the title changes within the same document. That ambiguity is not disrespect. It is reverence wrapped in pragmatism. She governs in a way the archives can record but not entirely explain. This is the first irony. Her power is constant, but her title is not. She does not rule alone. The council is both her audience and her instrument. They speak in measured tones, rarely raising voices, often repeating phrases for clarity. Shall it be as written? Let the measure stand. Let it be recorded again. It is not drama that governs Ebla, but rhythm. One meeting may last an entire day, deciding how many donkeys to assign for the autumn festival. Another may conclude in a few minutes, confirming a treaty that took months to negotiate. There is no script, only order. When the king is away, at a shrine, a diplomatic visit, or merely silent, the queen presides. She receives reports, listens to oaths, reviews the alignment of temple distributions. Her seal is shaped like a mountain flower, pressed into clay with a careful weight. It appears beside the king's on some tablets, alone on others. In one fragment she signs a land decree with the words, "Let the boundaries remain unchanged." The line is precise, even gentle, but it ends a dispute that might have reached beyond words. She's not alone in her authority. Other women appear in the archives, noble daughters, priestesses, scribal officials, their names fewer, but their acts preserved. One oversees the delivery of tin from the north. Another signs a treaty involving livestock rotation. Their presence is subtle but constant. When the palace receives gift from Mari, a record notes, "The Lady of Ebla greeted the envoy. She accepted the bolts of cloth. She returned 3 with embroidery." The style of the embroidery is not described, but the gesture is. This is the second irony. The gesture remains when the detail does not. Within the temple precincts, the queen is more than administrator. She leads rituals during the days of stillness, when no offerings are made and the gods are honoured through abstention. She fasts publicly, according to a fragmentary list of court rituals. She chooses which hymn is sung when the moon disappears. She selects the girls who sweep the sacred thresholds. These acts are not grand, but they are recorded, and in Ebla, that is the measure of permanence. A rare find, a tablet sealed 3 times and buried beneath a foundation stone, includes both the king's and queen's names, listing them equally as signatories to a temple endowment. It offers 20 jars of oil, 2 woven tapestries, and the field of Anasha for the service of Cura. The act is devotional, it is political, it is administrative, it is sealed by a woman who in most texts appears only in the footnotes. Her seal rests beside her husband's, not beneath it, beside. This is the third irony. She stands beside the king in clay more than in legend. In the council, decisions are slow, no one rushes. A report on the grain levels in the southern district may be read aloud twice. A priest may be summoned to confirm that a field once belonged to a temple. The scribes take notes during the meeting, then rewrite them into formal language for the archives. The queen sometimes corrects them. A fragment reads, "Revise the 4th line. The count of sheep is incorrect." She does not sign it, but her correction is preserved. The council's records show fluctuations in power, moments of disagreement, but rarely disarray. When the tribute from Mimar is late, one minister suggests sending a second letter, another advises waiting. The queen says only, "Let the gods observe our patience." The phrase becomes a proverb among the scribes, copied in later tablets as a model of diplomatic restraint. She never meant it as a proverb, she meant it as policy. Outside the council chamber, the city continues as it always has. Ovens lit, grain pounded, tablets etched. The people do not see the council meet, but they feel its touch. The price of barley remains steady. The roads are watched, the wells are cleaned, the balance holds. When the queen walks through the market, children do not run to greet her. They bow their heads, just slightly, returning to their tasks. She does not speak loudly. She does not wear gold. Her presence is not ceremonial. It is structural, and when she dies, as all rulers do, there is no public lamentation. Her death is noted on a single tablet. In the 12th year of Ishadamu, the lady passed into silence. Her seal is removed. No offerings are listed, no procession described. But in the years that follow, her name is invoked whenever order is remembered. In the archive, one tablet bears her final seal. The clay is cracked, the inscription faint. It lists the transfer of oil from palace to temple, nothing more. But beneath it, a scribe has written in the corner, "She kept the balance. No name, just that." And somewhere in the long corridors of clay, the queen remains, not in portrait or story, but in the ledger, the seal, and the silence between decisions. The sky shifts slowly, as it always does in Ebla, but beyond the eastern horizon, a different kind of wind begins to stir. Not a breeze across fields or a seasonal gust through the valleys, but a movement of kings and conquests. In the heartlands of Mesopotamia, the Akkadian Empire gathers strength under Sargon, whose name begins to appear not in tribute records, but in whispered margins. His titles are long and unfamiliar. His emissaries move differently. They do not bring gifts of modest silver or politely phrased inquiries. They bring certainty, statements carved in the tongue of empire, messages from a realm that does not negotiate, only confirms. Ebla's scribes begin to record these arrivals with new care. One entry reads, "Akkadian envoy, bearing no goods, only words. Another adds, no blessing invoked, no seal exchanged. This is not the usual dance of diplomacy. It is the first cold glance of something vaster. Irkab-Damu, still seated, still measured, receives the Akkadian letters with the same protocol afforded to all foreign correspondences. But the clay is different, heavier. The script, sharply etched and deeply grooved, is unfamiliar to some of the younger scribes. It is not poetry, it is declaration. The letter does not ask for alliance, it announces dominion. Sargon, king of the four quarters, watches. Let all cities remember his gaze. There is no threat in the line, but neither is there humility. The letter is copied, stored, and answered with delicacy. Ebla replies, "We honour the sender. Let the peace between us remain shaped like the moon." The metaphor is vague by design. This is the first irony. The more powerful the visitor, the softer the reply. The emissaries from Akkad return infrequently, but with increasing certainty. They walk the palace halls with a presence different from Murray's polite tension, or Nagar's cautious optimism. These are not equals. They do not sit during council meetings. They wait, they observe, and the scribes record their stillness. One tablet notes, "The Akkadian stood at the gate, unmoved by delay." Another adds, "No food was refused, yet none was touched." Whether these actions are ritual, disdain, or strategy remains unknown. Behind closed doors, the council discusses the shift. Some propose the strengthening of ties with Mari or Naga as counterweight. Others suggest tribute, modest and symbolic, to placate the East. The Queen remains silent in these meetings. Later, her seal appears on a decree to reinforce the outer road stations and increase the caravan patrols. Nothing is spoken, but the message is clear. The empire sees, and Ebla prepares to be seen more carefully. And yet, life in the city does not tremble. The markets open, the priests chant, the scribes write. The temples remain active. Kura receives his offerings. Ishara's priestesses oversee the rites of purification. But in the archives, Akkad begins to take up space. A new room is designated, not large, but specific, for documents related to Sargon and his successors. Its shelves are few, but meticulously ordered. Each tablet is labelled with both its origin and tone: neutral, favourable, ambiguous. The scribes have learned not just to record, but to interpret. One such tablet is curiously empty. Its seal is intact, the clay unmarred except for a single line. Let this speak without words. Whether it is a gesture of subtlety or a threat is unclear. The archivist who stored it labelled it watchful. That label remains. This is the second irony. What says the least is preserved with the most care. As Sargon's empire grows, the letters from other cities change. Some adopt Akkadian phrasing. Others begin with references to Enlil or Ishtar, not Kura. Ebla responds in kind, cautiously adjusting language while retaining its identity. A fragment from a royal response reads, "Ebla speaks the tongue of her fathers, but listens to all winds." It is a diplomatic phrase, neither defiant nor submissive. The scribes who pen these replies walk a careful path, one where tone is more vital than substance. Rumours reach the council, cities overtaken, alliances broken, shrines repurposed. But no direct confrontation occurs. Instead, a delegation from Akkad arrives, larger than usual, bearing heavy gifts, bronze tools, jars of resin, rare pigments. These are not tribute, but symbols, evidence of status. Along with them comes a new letter, this time from Naram Sin, grandson of Sargon, whose ambitions already loom. The letter is eloquent, grand, and unsparing. The world bends to the seal of Akkad. Let your city remain open, that peace may walk through its gate. There is no demand. There is only certainty. Ebla replies with its finest composition. The scribes compose a document spanning 3 tablets, each lined with parallel invocations to Kura, to Dagon, to the peace of the north, to the wisdom of alliance. The seal of the king and queen both appear. The letter is dispatched with carefully chosen gifts: white wool, polished obsidian, a tablet listing the names of 30 vassal cities. It is not a submission. It is an assertion, gently placed. This is the third irony. When threatened, Ebla answers not with weapons, but with proof of its order. Within the archive, the Akkadian room expands, not with fear, but with clarity. The scribes now copy not just their own letters, but those of others, received second-hand or overheard through merchant gossip. One tablet quotes a traveller from Nagar. Naram-Sin has eyes in every city. Whether true or not, it is copied and stored. Observation becomes a form of resistance. The council continues to meet. The Queen's seal still ratifies decisions. The city still trades, still worships, still breathes in the patterned rhythm of its calendars. But a new layer settles into the clay. Every document is now written with 2 audiences in mind: the present and the eye from the east. No word is wasted, no phrase is careless. And yet, amid the weight of this awareness, a scribe writes in the margin of a barley inventory, "Let the gods count the years, and let us count the grain." It is not defiance, it is continuity. The empire watches, but Ebla remembers. When the seal of Erkabdamu fades, it is not torn away, but placed gently aside. His successor, Ishadamu, steps into rule not as a warrior or disruptor, but as a keeper of equilibrium. The city does not change overnight. It exhales, then adjusts. The council still convenes. The scribes still fill the archives. The tributary cities still send goods wrapped in straw and sealed with patterned clay. But beneath this rhythm, a tension hums, faint, insistent, like a taut string just before it breaks. Ishadamu inherits not a throne, but a balance measured to the breath. His rule begins with continuity, and so he leans into it. His name appears first in palace logs: Ishadamu, son of Erkabdamu, renewer of peace, not in fanfare but in formula. He does not boast, he reaffirms. A letter to Nagar opens. As our fathers agreed, so do we. A decree to the outer fields reads, "No new tribute, only steadiness." His first act is to send gifts to old allies, baskets of dried dates, linen woven with the seal of Kura, tablets copied from previous agreements. He repeats what worked. He echoes what endured. This is the first irony. To lead forward, he walks backward. Yet all around him, the world has shifted. Akkad no longer watches. It encroaches. Naram-Sin, no longer just a name in distant letters, becomes a presence in trade, in rumour, in fear. Reports arrive from the west. Cities once neutral now carry Akkadian seals. A traveller from Emar tells of shrines emptied and temples rededicated. The scribes record these whispers, not as prophecy, but as documentation. One writes, "Let it be noted that the messengers from Tukar sent no offering this year." Another, "The roads from the east bring less copper, more silence." Ishadamu reads these entries, though he speaks little of them. Instead, he increases the diplomatic pace. New letters are drafted, longer, more careful. Some include gifts of writing tablets and unmarked seals, subtle invitations to shared language. One letter to a minor city reads, "If you write as we write, then peace remains near." Ebla's scribes work harder now. Their inkless writing becomes both shield and sword. More tablets are fired and stored, more duplicates are made. One archive room is fully converted into a diplomatic library, a catalogue of every known alliance, every tribute, every oiled phrase exchanged with foreign kings. They copy old treaties and mark them still in effect. They inventory the names of scribes in foreign cities, noting changes. The record thickens, and yet in the markets, life continues as before. Vendors arrange dried figs in clay bowls. Children carry small offerings to household shrines. The temples remain full. In the temple of Kura, a new chant is introduced for the season of wind. Let balance return as breath returns. It is whispered through incense smoke, never shouted. The gods are not asked for protection. They are thanked for rhythm. Still, the city braces. Ishar-Damu calls for a review of Ebla's defences, not to prepare for war, but to understand the limits of peace. The council draws no maps, builds no walls, but orders a full survey of road stations and granaries. One tablet records, each gate shall report its count, each field its yield, each tablet its twin. Nothing new is added, but all is recounted. This is the second irony. In preparation for change, the city chooses repetition. Amid these efforts, a delegation arrives from Akkad. Not a letter, not a caravan, men, 30 of them, well-dressed, silent, composed. They bring gifts of lapis, bronze tools, and a letter from Naram Sin. It reads, "Let your peace be joined to ours, and your gods shall remain." The phrase is ambiguous, almost gentle, but in its curves lies a firm thread. Ebla hosts the men in a courtyard shaded with woven cloth. They eat, they speak in Akkadian, they praise the city's archives, its order, its scribes. Then they leave, without confirming alliance or demanding tribute. The message is clear. The empire waits for answer, not approval. Ishar-Damu responds with precision. He sends his own delegation to Akkad. Not soldiers, not priests, but scribes. They carry 3 tablets, one restating an old treaty, one listing Ebla's trade offerings, and one blank but sealed. The seal bears the symbol of Ishar-Damu, a circle enclosed by 4 lines, one for each quarter of the land. It is his answer, a readiness to speak, but not to yield. In the archive, a scribe copies the exchange carefully. He notes, "The king sends silence, shaped." He does not elaborate. The phrase is filed with rest. A few years pass. The tribute from outer cities begins to slow. Some arrive late, others in reduced measure, a few stop altogether. The records reflect the decline. Only 3 bolts of linen from army, no copper from Hashu, no message from Amar. Each line is written plainly, without judgment. The archivists record what is, not what is wished. Ishar-Damu responds by increasing internal circulation. Goods are redistributed. Temples receive slightly less. Markets slightly more. No one is told why. But the people notice that bread remains in baskets, oil in jars. This is the third irony. In the face of scarcity, the city offers abundance. The last letters of Ishar-Damu's reign are the most careful. They contain prayers embedded within diplomacy. One to Naga ends with the line, "Let your walls remain, that ours may echo yours." Another to a temple city to the north offers not goods, but scribes. "We send 3 recorders to aid your ledgers. Let their hands be yours." These gestures are soft, almost desperate, but they are structured, like everything in Ebla. shaped to endure whether or not they succeed. The final reference to Ishar-Damu appears not in a royal decree, but in a calendar entry. A note for the Temple of Kura reads, "In the 10th year of Ishar-Damu, the barley rose early. The gods were thanked. The seal remains. No death date, no succession plan, just a harvest and a seal. And so his rule ends not with war or collapse, but with a breath held. The clay speaks, but only softly. Ishar-Damu, king of Ebla, renewer of peace, does not vanish. He dissolves into repetition. It begins not with a declaration, not with a shattered treaty or a messenger returned wounded, but with absence. The letters stop. The Akkadian seal, once familiar on clay tablets received at regular intervals, no longer appears. No gifts, no threats, no acknowledgements, only a void where diplomacy once flowed. The council waits. The scribes continue to copy old treaties, to file routine tallies, but the space where foreign correspondence would be placed grows larger, emptier. The silence is not peace, it is preparation. From the east, caravans report movement, troops crossing river fords, cities quieted beneath new flags, shrines emptied of native idols and resanctified with Akkadian invocations. No tablet confirms it. No official letter explains it. The merchants simply say, "They are coming." In Ebla, the air thickens, not with smoke or dust, but with the weight of anticipation. Ishar-Damu orders no new walls, no conscription. Instead, the city deepens its structure. Records are copied again. Warehouses are inventoried for the third time in as many months. A new list is drafted, not of goods, but of locations for hiding tablets. One archivist writes in the margin, "To preserve what cannot be defended." His entry is not dramatic, it is procedural. The scribes know what the city cannot admit. This is the first irony. War does not begin with violence, but with filing. Then, suddenly, the dust arrives. Real, not metaphorical. Kicked up by the feet of soldiers who do not announce themselves. Akkad descends not in ceremony, but in motion. Naram-Sin's army is not large by legend, but it is relentless. It does not pause to explain. It does not send heralds. It passes through outer settlements like wind through reeds. A few try to resist. Their names are scratched from ledgers. Others surrender before the soldiers arrive. Still, no message reaches the palace. In the council chamber, decisions are made quickly but without panic. The archivists begin to bury select tablets. Others are hidden behind walls sealed in baskets, placed beneath storage pits. The rest remain where they always have, stacked by category, tagged with strings, ordered by rain. Not all can be saved. The scribes do not choose favourites. They choose what is representative, what holds the rhythm. One writes, "Let the treaties remain. Let the barley counts go." Another decides, "Keep the letter from Nagar. Burn the one from Amar." These are not choices of sentiment, but of record. Outside the city, fires rise. Whether from retreating allies or advancing enemies is unclear. Smoke settles in the valleys. The watchmen report movement beyond the eastern road. Still, no official comes. Still, no envoy. Only silence and the hum of things about to end. In the temple of Kura, the priests perform the rites for calmness. No offerings for victory. No chance for deliverance. Just a steady plea that whatever comes may pass like water, not fire. A priestess writes a line in chalk upon the wall. May the archive be remembered. This is the second irony. They do not ask for survival, but for memory. The assault is sudden. The records do not describe it. There are no tablets recounting the fall, only its shape traced in absence. Burned corridors, collapsed walls, a shattered storage jar containing a treaty sealed twice by the king and once by the queen, blackened but intact. Layers of ash covering tablets left unfired. The archaeologists who uncover them thousands of years later will find clay hardened not by the kiln, but by catastrophe. The invaders do not write. They do not send back lists of conquest. What survives are traces. Scorched surfaces, shattered thresholds, pieces of altars bearing Akkadian graffiti. A single tablet, broken in 3 places, reads only, "The gods have turned." Whether written by a scribe, a priest, or a witness is unknown. It was not finished. The palace falls. The archive room burns. Rooms designed for the containment of time now hold only smoke and crumbling roof beams. The seal of Ishar-Damu is never found again. The name of the queen vanishes. The council chamber is buried beneath a layer of brick dust so thick that no object is recovered whole. And yet, many tablets survive, not because they were protected, but because they were ignored or buried too quickly to be consumed. They rest for millennia, silent, patient, whole. This is the third irony. Fire destroys the city, but preserves the clay. Naram Sin never writes of Ebla's destruction. It is not celebrated. It is not recorded in Akkadian annals as a moment of triumph. It is absorbed into empire, then forgotten. No Akkadian monument names Ebla. No Akkadian temple sings of its conquest. The act is thorough but not glorious. And yet, in the soil of Tel Mardek centuries later, archaeologists will find the remains, not just of homes and thresholds, but of thought. Contracts between cities, hymns to gods no longer worshipped, legal codes written in a language no one remembers. One tablet lists the delivery of 10 fish to the temple cook. Another records the oath of peace between Ebla and Kish. Another, broken and scorched, contains a list of royal birthdays. Together they speak louder than any victor's proclamation. Ebla is not defeated in the way of legend. It is not remembered in lament or in song. It is ended, then buried, then found. And in the quiet between those acts the scribes endure. Not in name, not in body, but in tablet, in line, in seal, in the echo of an archive not quite silenced. After the flames pass, after the footsteps of soldiers fade into the wind, after the smoke collapses into soot and the watchtowers crumble with no eyes left to keep watch, there is only stillness. Not the stillness of peace or sleep, but the kind that follows inertia, thick, brittle, absolute. Ebla lies flattened not just in form but in function. The courtyards once filled with a rustle of scribes and the murmur of council voices are now strewn with broken brick and fragments of burnt timber. The temple of Kura, once bright with incense and chant, is reduced to charred pillars and unrecognizable altars. A single copper hook, once used to hang ritual scrolls, dangles from a beam that no longer touches the ground. The archives have not disappeared, but they are no longer arranged. The shelves have collapsed, the baskets burned, the tablets strewn across floors and half buried in ash. Clay that was meant to be read is now mistaken for rubble. This is the first irony. The most ordered city ends without ceremony. There are no survivors recorded. No scribe returns to etch a final word. The tablets end mid-line, mid-count, mid-oath. One names a delivery of grain. To the gatekeeper, 6 sacks. It stops there. Another begins a temple inventory, listing oils and textiles, but breaks before reaching the final tally. These are not dramatic testaments or deliberate farewells. They are interruptions, lives and labours paused without notice. The silence that follows is not chosen. It is the silence left behind when there is no one left to speak. Dust begins to settle. It coats the beams, the blackened walls, the scattered bones of pack animals that never fled. Wind drags strands of straw into rooms once used to seal treaties. Sunlight pierces the wreckage but does not warm it. In the absence of caretakers, the city's logic disintegrates. Paths once walked daily vanish beneath layers of silt. No one recalls the sequence of rooms in the palace. No one sweeps the thresholds. Time loses its outline. In the ruins of the council chamber, one tablet lies preserved between two collapsed stones. It bears a seal now indecipherable, and a line barely legible. It is agreed. What was agreed is no longer known. The sentence floats, isolated, like a lone breath suspended in still air. It is filed among the last. Beyond the city walls the fields go untended. Barley dies in the soil. Herds wander without call or gate. The irrigation channels clog with leaves, then fill with sediment. Without maintenance, the land forgets its human rhythm. It returns to wind and thorn. Ebla is not buried with intent. It is buried by consequence. Rain and dust, sun and silence do the work of concealment. Roofs fall in. Walls lean, then give way. The mud brick dissolves, but the clay tablets, hardened by fire and by fate, remain. They do not shine. They do not cry out. They endure. This is the second irony. What was meant to last briefly becomes permanent. Generations pass. No travellers speak of Ebla. No maps mention it. The names of its kings, once pressed hundreds of times into official documents, vanish from memory. Even its language disappears, unspoken, untranslated, unread. The gods of its temples receive no offerings. The temples themselves collapse into shapeless mounds. The seal of Irkab-Damu is never used again. The queen's signet, pressed once into a treaty of trade, is never pressed again. Ebla, which once received tribute from cities across the Syrian plain, becomes not a capital, but a quiet hill in the distance. And yet, beneath that hill, the records rest. Layer upon layer, some tablets intact, others broken, scorched, worn smooth. They lie in arrangements once meaningful, treaties beside inventories, hymns beside ledgers, now scattered by falling roofs and scavenging time. A few are buried in jars protected from both heat and moisture. Others are fused together by fire, preserving their contents in ghostly imprints. No one lifts them, no one reads them, but they persist. In the absence of readers, the clay itself becomes the message. Its survival is not narrative, it is presence. One layer above the Royal Archive, archaeologists in a later age will find a crushed basket, its reed frame still clinging to the curve of a tablet. The tablet contains a list of garments distributed to temple dancers. The handwriting is careful, the seal pressed deeply. It is mundane, precise, unmistakably human. In another room, a tablet scorched on one side records a shipment of copper from Alalak. The second half is lost, but the phrase at the start survives. In the year the king waited. What he waited for is never explained. This is the third irony. The fragments that remain are more intimate than the whole. No lamentation is recorded. No bard sings of Ebla's final night. It is not like not like Troy, not like Babylon. There is no myth attached to its destruction. It is not known in later epics, not invoked in liturgies. It fades without echo, and yet, in the dust, it is more complete than cities remembered in verse. Not because it endured as story, but because it endured as system. A ledger is not a tale, but it holds truth. A treaty is not a poem, but it speaks. The scribes did not try to make their words eternal. They simply tried to record the world as it moved through them, and in doing so they left behind something more than remembrance. They left structure, sequence, a rhythm of human order. Ebla falls, not with thunder, but with the hush of final breath. Its fall is not visible in a single moment. It happens slowly, then all at once, then is done. And then there is silence. A silence thick enough to outlast centuries. Yet within that silence the city continues to whisper, in tablets that crack but do not crumble, in seals that fade but do not vanish, in names that disappear from speech but remain pressed into clay. And in time, long after its fall, long after its name has been erased even from the memory of ruins, someone will find it again. But for now, Ebla is ash and silence. Time does not mourn. It moves slowly, indiscriminately, layer by layer, century after century, until even the outline of memory is compressed into sediment. Where once stood the palace of Ebla, where voices once echoed through sunlit courtyards and seals clicked softly against damp clay, now only earth remains, thick, wind-scoured, silent. The walls are gone. The gates are indistinct ridges. The pathways are swallowed by thistles and the dry rootwork of forgotten grasses. Nothing above the surface suggests the life that once organized the horizon. Travellers pass nearby without pausing. Shepherds graze animals on the mound. No story draws them in. No rumour remains. The city is not only lost, it is unknowable. Seasons pass like breath. Empires rise and fall around it. Hittites, Arameans, Assyrians. New cities are built on new plains. New languages shape the air. Stone replaces clay. Iron replaces bronze. The gods of Ebla are no longer named. Their altars long crumbled, their images ground down to pebbles. Kura, once central to the rites of balance and accounting, becomes dust without echo. Not defied, not destroyed, simply forgotten. The names of kings that once filled rows of tablets vanish from all living memory. Irkab-Damu, Ishar-Damu, the queen with her flower-shaped seal. None are recalled. No inscription survives above the surface. No carving names their deeds in visible stone. The scribes are not remembered even as a profession. Their craft, so methodical, so enduring in material, dissolves from thought. Ebla ceases not only to exist, but to have existed. This is the first irony. Nothing survives as completely as the thing entirely forgotten. And yet beneath the soil the city remains. Quiet, unspoiled in its slumber, it endures beneath layers of hardened dust and water-packed clay. The fire that ended Ebla also protected it, hardening its records, sealing its archives in tombs of collapse. The tablets, once neatly stacked, lie scattered but whole. Some remain in their jars, labelled with clay tags. Others are crushed beneath ceiling beams but remain legible, pressed tight in places where air has not moved in 3,000 years. Beneath the northern corner of the palace, near what was once the archive's second chamber, a clay basket of land deeds rests untouched. It lists field boundaries, owners' names, the location of 2 ancient wells. Its script is steady, almost graceful. The scribe's hand was certain. The inkless letters, formed with precision, lie waiting in darkness. For generations, the soil above is tilled, trampled, saturated by rain, cracked by sun. Occasionally, fragments surface, a piece of worked stone, a bit of pottery, the curve of a wall. But they are not recognized. There is no context to reattach them. To the ploughman, they are obstacles. To the shepherd, they are nothing. A legend lingers in the villages nearby, that beneath the hill lies an ancient fortress, burned by gods, cursed by silence. Children dare one another to walk across it at night. No one digs, no one searches. This is the second irony. A civilization that documented every breath of its governance becomes legend only in superstition. Centuries pass. A different time begins, one with scholars, with tools of measurement, with curiosity rekindled. In the early decades of the 20th century, explorers and archaeologists begin to study the landscape of Syria. They bring shovels, notebooks, hope. They are searching for many things: temples of Mari, roads of the Amorites, the roots of ancient trade. At first, Tel Mardik, the name given to the mound by nearby villagers, appears unremarkable. It is one hill among hundreds. Its shape is natural, its elevation slight. But the pottery shards near the surface hint otherwise. In 1964, excavations begin. Slowly, cautiously, a wall is found, then a threshold, then rooms, filled not with statues, not with coins, but with tablets. Thousands, tens of thousands, some stacked, some tumbled, some bearing seals so crisp they seem pressed only yesterday. One is lifted carefully from beneath a layer of blackened stone. Its inscription, still legible, begins with the word Ebla. The name returns. This is the third irony. The word outlives the people who gave it meaning. Scholars rush to interpret what they have found. The tablets are written not in Akkadian or Sumerian alone, but in a Semitic language previously unknown, the voice of the Eblaites themselves. The archive is dense with treaties, hymns, inventories, lists of kings, letters from cities long considered mythical. Mari, Nagar, Ami, the geography of the 3rd millennium BCE is redrawn. The memory of Ebla, silent for 4,000 years, rises again, not through song, not through legend, but through bureaucracy. The scribes, long unnamed, speak again through their ledgers. The Queen's seal is identified on tablets of temple distribution. Irkab-Damu's treaties are found, duplicated, annotated. A list of festivals, a catalogue of priestly duties, a registry of messengers dispatched by season. Each tablet expands the city's shape, not in stone, but in thought. Ebla becomes real, becomes structured, becomes known. But even as it is uncovered, it remains partially veiled. So much is still undeciphered. The language, intricate and old, resists full clarity. The people themselves, their faces, their gestures, their laughter, remain invisible. The sound of their breath, the colour of their robes, the smell of their market, none of it can be recovered from clay. What remains is order, and through that order a faint warmth, not of narrative but of pattern, not of story but of rhythm. The city forgotten so fully returns not as myth, but as archive, not to be worshipped, simply to be understood. Ebla slept for 4,000 years. Now, gently it begins to stir. In the dry soil of western Syria, on the hill once known only as Tel Mardik, the wind lifts a thin veil of dust and exposes a corner of worked stone. It is small, insignificant to the eye, but beneath it lies a palace once alive with councillors and scribes, with sealed agreements and the scent of incense. Beneath it lie voices, not of individuals, but of a civilization that once measured peace in barley and wrote the names of kings in careful, cuneiform lines. The year is 1964. A team of archaeologists led by Paolo Mattiai from the University of Rome begins to dig. They are not searching for Ebla because they do not know it exists. They are looking for anything. What they find at first is pottery, Bronze Age, undecorated, familiar, then walls, then rooms, then tablets, one tablet, then two, then a room full. At first the script appears Akkadian, recognizable, if limited, But then a second script emerges, similar in form but different in structure, in vocabulary and cadence. It is not Akkadian. It is something older, something rooted in Semitic grammar but shaped by its own rules. Slowly, scholars understand. This is a language not seen before, a language that belongs not to the scribes of Sumer nor the priests of Mari, but to a city-state unknown. A name appears on a tablet, Ebla, again and again. And then in seal after seal, in treaty after treaty, in ledgers of trade and inventories of temple goods, the city declares itself, over and over. This is the first irony. It was never truly lost. It simply waited for someone to read. The archives recovered are vast. Over 17,000 clay tablets, many complete, others fragmented but legible. They are stored in jars, in baskets, on shelves where they fell in place during the city's final hours. Some are still stacked in order. Others are fused by fire. Among them, kings reappear, Irkab-Damu patient and calculating, Ishar-Damu deliberate and fragile. Names once reduced to dust now rest in the hands of translators, reshaping history. The letters they wrote to cities like Marian Nagar confirm that diplomacy existed far earlier than previously believed. Economic systems detailed in grain distributions and textile counts demonstrate an administrative precision on par with later empires. Temple records reveal a religion both structured and subtle, gods known nowhere else, rites performed according to calendars of astonishing complexity. One tablet describes a ceremony for the goddess Ishara, involving 3 priestesses, 5 jars of honey, and a period of complete silence at dawn. Another lists 30 towns owing tribute to Ebla, each named, each noted for its contribution. The scholars work slowly. Translation requires care. The language, now called Eblaite, yields its meaning only in fragments, built from context and comparison, layered like the ruins themselves. But what emerges is clear. Ebla was not peripheral. It was central, a hub of diplomacy, a power of commerce, a keeper of treaties and memory. Its reach extended from the Euphrates to the Mediterranean. Its language influenced others. Its system of record-keeping was both practical and profound. This is the second irony. The city best known for its administration becomes a revelation through its ruins. Each tablet is a breath drawn back from silence, a letter from the queen to a priest, a record of grain storage, a poetic fragment describing the moon as the tablet of night. The more that is uncovered, the more the shape of life returns, not in grand narrative but in texture. A jar labelled with the phrase "for the midwinter feast" lies beside a calendar that lists feast dates in lunar sequence. A treaty between Ebla and army includes not only terms, but the names of the officials who witnessed it, along with the precise weights of the gifts exchanged. A marriage contract includes stipulations for wool delivery and child-rearing arrangements. There are no myths, no epic stories of gods and monsters, and yet the collection is mythic in its own way. A civilization reassembled from the very tools it once used to define itself. The rediscovery of Ebla challenges every map. Cities once dismissed as apocryphal are confirmed. Routes long speculated now make sense. Entire generations of scholars revise their understanding of the 3rd millennium BCE, and yet, as the history expands, the mystery deepens. Who truly were the Eblaites? How did their language form? Why did it vanish so completely? And what of the people, their faces, their songs, their questions? The tablets speak of administration, of law, of belief, but rarely of emotion. The city remains partially veiled, even as it re-emerges. Still, the voices persist. On a small, nearly overlooked tablet a scribe writes, "I send you peace, pressed into clay, that it may arrive even if I do not." The line is not part of a treaty or a transaction. It appears at the end of a message to an unknown recipient, unsigned. Perhaps personal, perhaps ceremonial, but unmistakably human. In that sentence, something transcends time. The impulse to endure, not through monument or conquest, but through the soft pressure of stylus on wet earth. This is the third irony. What was meant as temporary becomes eternal. Today the ruins of Ebla remain uncovered in part, covered in part, an archaeological breath paused mid-inhale. The tablets are housed in museums, studied, debated, treasured. The language is still being passed, still resisting full clarity. But the weight of its return is undeniable. Ebla is no longer a blank space on the historical map. It is a city with addresses, voices, systems, shadows, and the scribes, long vanished, are no longer voiceless. Their lines, etched in ancient clay, read once more. The night settles over what remains of Ebla, not in ruins, but in fragments of thought, in tablets that outlived fire and erasure. The air is cool above Tel Mardik, still and breathless, as if the land itself listens to the silence below. The stars return, slow and constant, tracing paths that once guided priestly hands, once timed the chants that marked the solstices. There are no fires here now, no processions, no councils, but beneath the soil the city waits in pieces, quiet, complete in its incompletion. The clay remembers. It does not rust. It does not rot. It holds names that once filled courtyards with purpose. It carries records of gifts exchanged, of fields measured, of treaties honoured. Even in stillness the scribes speak, through tallies of barley, through lines that begin but never end. And in these gentle traces a rhythm endures, careful, ambient, reverent. Somewhere a basket of tablets remains sealed. Somewhere a queen's seal rests unbroken. Somewhere the inkless memory of a child's name, written only once, sleeps beneath collapsed stone. The earth does not rush to reveal them. Time moves in long, slow spirals, like incense lifting in temple air. There is no haste. Ebla returns not through grandeur but through quiet. Not through monument, but through method. A city that counted its life into clay now counts its afterlife in dust and light. And as sleep descends, as lids grow heavy, and the last thoughts drift like wind across a plain, the voices of ancient scribes begin to fade once more into the soil. Soft, structured, eternal.